Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and folk of all ages, you know what time it is. It is the 1st of April, and that means it's time to go into our holidays, holy days, and days of remembrance for our people. On April 9th, we celebrate the Day of Remembrance for Jarl Haakon. The very next day, on April 10th, we celebrate a Day of Remembrance for Yeowell Stubba. And on the last day of the month, April 30th, we celebrate Hexennacht. Now, conventionally, in modern times, we observe the Hexennacht officially on April 20th for this year. That being the third weekend of the month on the Saturday, and a nice easy time for our folk to get together amongst jobs and life, just to smooth things out and ensure that we can hold a proper holiday devoted to our gods. Now, the interesting bit, and we'll of course go into it next month, but with the holiday of Hexennacht being held on April 30th, the very next day on May 1st is May Day. These holidays are generally linked, but due to modern conveniences, we do observe them on April 20th and May 18th, both third Saturdays of each month. But if you do have the folk around you to observe a proper holiday on the proper days, it would be April 30th and May 1st. Now, I'll drop next month's video on May 1st, so keep an eye out for that. But if you do need any information on May Day beforehand, there will be a link in the description to the write-up over on the Runestone sites, where you can get all the information you need about May Day. And of course, you can always reach out to me, any of the Gothar, folk builders, or anything like that if you need any more assistance. Alrighty, so let's get into it and actually go over some details surrounding these special days. We're going to start chronologically. On April 9th is the Day of Remembrance for Jarl Haakon, or Haakon Sigurdsson, son of the Norwegian Earl of Lade. He was exiled to Denmark after the murder of his father by Harald II Greycloak. He soon allied with Harald Bluetooth, and they overthrew his father's murderer. While Haakon became the sovereign in the west, Harald Bluetooth annexed southeastern Norway. The two would again join forces when Bluetooth needed aid in fighting against the Holy Roman Emperor Otto II in 974. Though forced into baptism, Haakon's faith in his gods was so strong that he was not only able to revolt against Bluetooth's efforts to Christianize Norway for a time, but also to spread and expand his faith in his lands. In the end, powers that he could not control began to sway the attitudes of his men, and he was killed by one of his own retainers. Jarl Haakon was the last Asatru ruler of Norway. His death in 995 Common Era, leading directly to the takeover by Olaf Tryggvason. So, what can we learn from this story? There will always be people in our lives who do not understand our faith and our dedication to our faith. Even our friends might choose to try and change our minds. When the people we have trusted to do this, we can sometimes find ourselves doubting our choices, even if for just a moment. What if? Take that breath and reaffirm your faith. It isn't always going to be easy, but nothing that is worth anything ever is. With dedication can come reward. We might not be able to make everyone understand our values and our beliefs, but for every person who turns away, there is a person somewhere whose mind can be opened by our words. There is that person whose soul longs to come home. They just don't know it yet. Perhaps your words, your dedication, your belief will be the thing that helps someone else find their way. And what better reward could there be for standing strong? We must also take a moment to remember to curb our arrogance. When we become too sure of ourselves and our ability to stand tall against everything that would fight us, we can become blinded by the reality of the situation around us. Always remember to take time to take the measure of a situation. Take the time to know if it is a good time to talk or to hold your tongue. Havamar 54. Wise in measure let each man be, but let him not wax too wise. For never the happiest of men is he who knows much of many things. Following April 9th, on April 10th, is the Day of Remembrance for John Yeowell Stubba. Now this is a new Day of Remembrance for the Asatru Folk Assembly. We officially celebrated that yet last year for the first time. On April 10th, 2023, the AFA marked the first official celebration of a Day of Remembrance for John Yeowell, known as Stubba. He enjoyed a long life and did many great works in spreading our faith in the Aesir. He led a full life, starting out by serving in an Irish division of the military and later the French Foreign Legion, earning distinction and being decorated by General Charles de Gaulle, and served in World War II before returning to his home country of England. His life is somewhat shrouded in mystery, as he preferred, but he became aware of his cultural English heritage and came to know the Aesir in the 1950s when he met another of our heroes, John Gibbs Bailey, Hoscord. Together, they would proceed to research and re-establish what they dubbed Odinism, and go on to found an organization dedicated to the worship of the Holy Aesir as the Odinic Rite. Gibbs Bailey, being at least a decade older than Yeowell, had been an Odinist since the 1930s, and by the time the two met, had been involved in a number of proto-Odinist groups. Yeowell felt the call of the gods, and eventually felt that Asatru was the natural religion for those of Northern and Indo-European descent, and sought to reclaim the religion and birthright of our ancestors. In 1973, believing they had codified a solid structural framework on which to build, they went forward practicing and disseminating our native religion until 1980, at which time the name of the formal societal organization was cemented simply to the Odinic Rite. Together with Hoscord, Stubba laid the foundation of the 9 noble virtues: courage, truth, honor, fidelity, discipline, hospitality, self-reliance, industriousness, and perseverance, which we still use today with the addition of the 10th noble virtue, victory. They together established connections with fellow devoted believers, notably folk mother Elsie Christensen, another one of our heroes, who they corresponded via letters, newsletters, and publications such as The Odinist, steadfastly spreading the religion of Asatru. This is now what we call folk building. Our folk builders are continuing this tradition constantly, bringing more and more of our folk home every single day, just as Stubba, Hoscord, and the Folk Mother did, every month contributing an article to our own newsletter, The Runestone. Stubba would eventually lead the Odinic Rite as the director of the court of Gothar, which is equivalent to being the Aseria Gothi. John Yeowell lived a full and long life, and his dedication to the Aesir never wavered. He was courageous in leaving Catholicism. He spoke the truth in his letters. He gained honor for his service in the war, and he exhibited fidelity in his devotion to the Odinic rite. He exhibited discipline in living nobly, and embodied hospitality in caring for his folk. He was self-reliant, typing many newsletters laboriously by hand on a typewriter, consistently being industrious, and he persevered until the end of his life. We hail these heroes for their foundational and right noble actions in the reclamation of our birthright and inheritance of the worship of the Aesir. It is important that we honor and remember not only the heroes of the distant past, but those in more recent days whose efforts have contributed to the renewal of our faith. Hail Stubba. And this brings us to April 30th and our holiday, or should we say April 20th and its observation. Either way, Hexennacht is that day. When the ground was thawed and colder weather was beginning to give way, it became necessary to move the cattle from the winter fields to the summer ones. Hexennacht traditionally was a festival celebrating this very thing. The main focus of the holiday was the bonfire. The men would all gather and build the large need fire. They would then walk the cattle through the smoke to bless them before rehoming them for the warm months. Often the men would call on Frey during Hexennacht, asking for fertility and abundance. While the men were off blessing the cattle, the women gathered together for their own festivities. They had their own bonfires, and it was during this time that the women often burned herbs and practiced their local magic or seder. As the men called on Frey, the women would often call on Freya. After the separate celebrations, men and women would come together and continue the festivities. We in the AFA celebrate this day as Hexennacht, instead of the more common Walpurgisnacht. Walpurgisnacht is named such because it is the night before the Christian feast day, honoring Saint Walpurga, who is credited with healing and repelling witches. Men and women celebrating separately and then coming together are one of the main features of Hexennacht, as well as the bonfire. A good way to celebrate the holiday might include the men building the bonfire, while the women practice communal seder. When they are finished, the men and women can join together around the bonfire. The women can throw herbs into the fire, and, asking the blessings of Frey and Freya, the men, women, and children can each take turns walking through the smoke. You'll find when studying, May Day is a very good complement, and it is a auspicious time of the year. Hexennacht moving into May Day, just another liminal doorway for our people. We'll learn more about May Day next month. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to read what I've read today or read on any of the other holidays, go on over to therunestone.org. There'll be a link to the main calendar and list of holidays and holy days, and all that information is there. Thank you so much, everybody. Have an amazing month, and be well. Hail Jarl Haakon. Hail Stubba. Hail Frey. Hail Freya. Hail the gods. Hail the folk. And hail the AFA. Good night, everybody.